This is Gemara in Gittin, Daf Ayin Beis, and we pick it up from the bottom of Ayin Aleph, Amid Beis, right after the Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah a case. We're continuing figuring out different ways in which one could commission someone to write a get, etc. So in this case, a bunch of people, Amru Loi, someone says over to a person, should we write a get for your wife? And he says, write it. Now that person that asked him doesn't go and write it. He goes and he commissions a sefer and Eidim. Says the Mishnah, even though the sofer wrote it, the Eidim signed it, then they gave this man back the get and he gave it to his wife. It does not work. Why? The Mishnah explained. Until he tells the sefer to write an Eidim to sign it. So it's really two parts of this Mishnah. The case, it doesn't work. The reason in which, until he tells the sefer to write an Eidim to sign it. So says the Gemara, Taimid Amar Tenu, it sounds like from the concluding words of the Mishnah, that the reason, it sounds like from the beginning of the Mishnah, that the reason why it's no good is because what did the husband say? Let's be precise again. V'amar lahen kusayvu. Husband said to write it. So it sounds like it's because he did not say to give it. But if the husband said to give the get to my wife, then indeed, then these people would be able to write it, sign it, and give the get on behalf of the husband. Says the Gemara, who is this opinion that would allow such a story? Mani, Rabbi Meir, Ta'amar, Mili, Memsar, and L'shliach, as we've had, Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that you're allowed to commission, you're allowed to give over words to a shliach. So in this case, you give the shliach the charge to empowered to give the get, and then he can do the whole thing. But says the Gemara Maseifa, what are the concluding words in the Mishnah say? When the Mishnah itself explained why it does not work, it does not say Ad Sheyamar until he says to know. The Mishnah says Ad Sheyamar L'Seifer K'Soif, that the only case it would work is if he tells the sefer to write an Eidim to sign it. This clearly indicates Asyan Rav Yosi. This sounds like we're going with the opinion of Rav Yosi. Da'amar, what does Rav Yosi hold? Mili loy memsar and l'shliach. And therefore the only way it would work if he explicates explicitly that you have to tell the sefer until he says to the sefer straight, not that he tells the person he could do it, but he tells the sefer straight to write it, and the Eidim to sign it. Says the Gemara, the classical kasha. Reisha Rabbi Meir v'Sefer Rabbi Yosi. Answers the Gemara, teretz number one. Yep, as we sometimes have indeed, Reisha Rabbi Meir v'Sefer Rabbi Yosi. Teretz number one. Teretz number two, Abaya Amar says Abaya, no, Kula Rabbi Meir, really, I'll tell you the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. V'acham b'maya skinon. So according to Rabbi Meir, how do we explain? He didn't say Tenu. Ihachi asks the Gemara. So we're going with Rameir, and he did not say Tenu. If he would have said Tenu, it would have worked. He didn't. Ihachi asked the Gemara Kasha. So the concluding line in the Mishnah, why does it say until he says Eidim to write and then he's to sign it? It should have just said until he says Tenu. Ella, says the Gemara, Hacha b'mayaskinan, says the Gemara, we're talking about over here, that really, if you would have said to know, it would have worked. But how many people are involved? As when we began reading the Mishnah, and as we said today, we said multiple. Amru. How many? Says the Gemara, you don't have three, that's the problem. Ihachi, ask the Gemara further, 1 second, about 8 lines. For the end of the Amid, if the issue at hand is that he didn't say it to 3 people, so the obvious kasha. Why does the Mishnah conclude and say until he says to the sefer to write it to sign it? It should have been said until he tells 3 people. Ella kula Rabbi Yosi. Okay, so Abaye tried to say the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, that didn't work. So now we flip and we say kula Rabbi Yosi. What's going on? Imru. And the case is, according to Rabbi Yosi, like we just said, Mili loy memshar and l'shliach. According to Rabbi Yosi, you cannot commission someone else. You cannot give over the charge to someone to write it. So the case of the Mishnah is the loy amar imru. That's the reason why it did not work. if the husband would have explicitly told the agents to get a cipher, then it would work. Says the Gemara, 1 second, Yachi, the same kasha. So in the end of the Mishnah should have said that what's the issue? That according to Rav Yosi, that if one would actually tell them explicitly, it would work. There's a chiddush going on over here. We just said Rav Yosi holds mili lo memsaran l'shliach. The Gemara is assuming that's only in a broad sense, but if there was an explicit charge, then Rav Yosi would agree that it would work. So now we're changing course. Originally, we thought that the issue was that in the Mishnah he said ksoiv, right? He didn't say tenu. Now says the Gemara, no. You know what the issue is? The issue is that he didn't tell this person explicitly to get someone else. Says the Gemara, but the problem is that the concluding line of the Mishnah, should have said that the issue is that you didn't tell someone else to do it. Void, and furthermore, asked the Gemara, we just took on, as we explained, a massive chiddush. That if you tell him explicitly to get someone else, that Rav Yosi would agree. Says the Gemara, is that true? Now we learned in the Mishnah, Ksav Sefer, the aid, Ksav Sefer, the aid kosher. We learned in the Mishnah that a get that has the writing of the Sefer and the signature of an aid is kosher. What does this mean? V'amar Rav Yirmiyah, and he explained, Chsam Sefer Shaninu, that if I have the Sefer wrote it and he signed it with another aid, then it's going to be kosher. V'amar Rav Chisda, and here we finally understand what's going on. It says Rav Chisda Masnisan Mani, this Mishnah that's saying that the guy who wrote it is the one that signed it with another aid. Whose opinion is this? Masnisan Mani Rabbi Yosi Damar Mili Loi Memsaran L'Shliach. So we have a brisa that's going with Rav Yosi that you can't give over words to a shliach. So far, so good. So how is this a kasha on Amr Imru? What we're trying to ask is on the concept that we just said, that if someone says explicitly to someone to go get someone else, Rav Yosi would agree. So we're asking that it's not true. Ask the Gemara, so what's the question? If you're going to 2 lines down. And if you're going to think, if you're going to tell me that Rav Yosi is Maid in such a case, then we have to be worried. Nafik minei chorba. We could cause an issue. Why could we cause an issue? Sometimes you're going to tell 2 people. Imru l'seifer, commission a sefer to write a get v'yichtayv, u'leplayni v'yichtimu, and Rav Yosi will agree that if he tells the guy and get Reuven and Shimon to sign it, that will also work. So what's the problem? Because we just said over here that if the sefer himself signs the get, it's kosher. So why do we have to be worried that if Rav Yosi admits in a scenario in which he told the shliach explicitly he could get someone else, Umisham kisufa decipher. You know what might happen? He might feel bad that the husband said to hire Reuven and Shimon as Edom, not hire, to have them sign it. And what? The cipher is going to feel bad. Why doesn't he sign it? That the shliach is going to feel bad and have the cipher sign incorrectly. So proves the Gemara. Once we have a brisa that says that the sefer signing is kosher, and we're saying that brisa is Rav Yosi that you can't give over words to shliach, it can't be that Rav Yosi is a maskim in a case in which you said explicitly would work, because then we could run into an issue that they might feel bad for the sefer and have him sign. Ella says the Gemara, we tried to say the whole Mishnah as Rav Meir, tried to say the whole Mishnah as Rav Yosi, concludes the Gemara, L'machavarta, Reisha Rameir, V'Sefer Rav Yosi. Even we tried both ways, it didn't work. Therefore, concludes the Gemara, we have to say that Lamaisa, the Reisha is Rameir and the Sefer is Rav Yosi. Rav Ashi Amar says the Gemara, don't give up hope so fast. Really, we could have explained Kula Rav Yosi, even though we just tried to do this. And it didn't work, says Rav Ashi, let's try one more time. And the way to do this is the whole issue was that concluding line of the Mishnah that said, until you say to the Sefer to write and to aid them to sign it, it's not going to be good. Says Rav Ashi, I have a novel way of reading the Mishnah. The Mishnah is building, each stage is building on the previous, not in a deal. Needless to say, if the person did not tell the husband, did not say to give, he just said ksaif, is not going to be good. Ela filu amar tinula. Here it is. We could be medayik that even if he said tinula will not work, and that's because Rav Yosi milulam imsaran l'shliach. V'loi mi bayani l'seichad l'amar l'beit tzlas v'ina say to 3 people. Ela filu amar l'beit tzlas will not work. V'loi mi bayechad l'amar imru. And needless to say, if he did not tell them to write someone else to write, it will not work. Ela filu amar imru. Nami loy. So says Rav Ashi, instead of learning the Mishnah that each line we could be medayek, I have another way of learning the Mishnah, which this is always the classical 2 different ways of learning a Mishnah. Either the words are precise and it's coming to infer something else, or it's building on each other. Says the Gemara, I have a raya to this, Tanya Kavase to Rav Ashi. We have a raya to Rav Ashi. Ksav Sefer Lishma. If a sefer wrote a get for the right purposes, and the Eidim signed for the right purposes, says the Braisa Afalpi, even though Shekasmua, they wrote it v'chasmua, and they signed it, v'nasnua loy, and they gave it to the husband, v'nasnu la, and the husband gave it to his wife. Still, a get bottle. It doesn't work. Why does it not work? I was lishma. Ad until sheyishmeu kaila, you have to hear the husband that's saying sheyoymar l'sefer k'soiv leidim chasoymai, that he's actually charging the sefer to write and the eidim to sign it. Leidim chasoymai yishmeu. What does it mean? You have to hear it. Lafuki man da'amar. Clearly, this brisa wants to point out something, and it's telling me how to learn Rav Yosi. That's coming to say not. Moide Rav Yosi b'amar imru, saying don't say Rav Yosi's moide b'amar imru. The only way it's going to work if you actually hear it. Ulafukein as well. Mid Rav Kahana Amar Rav, like we learn Rav Kahana Marav. So Rav Ashi Lamaisa has a second way of learning the Mishnah that it could all be Rav Yosi, either Reisha Ramei or Sefer Rav Yosi, or we could say Kula Rav Yosi, and we even have a Raya, a Braisa proving that point. And we continue with the Mishnah halfway down Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. Someone gives his wife a get and he says, this shall be your get if I die. Or, he says, this is your get if I die from this sickness. Or he says, this is your get and it should work after I die. In all these cases, says the Mishnah, Loi Amar Klum. In all these cases, his words are indicating that the get is not going to affect until after he is no longer around. And of course, you cannot divorce once one is dead. Case 2 in the Mishnah. But if someone says, I want the get to work today if I die, and now if I die, then Harez a get, then it is a get, because he clearly isn't making the get come into effect now. Case number 3 in the Mishnah. Someone says, here's your get today and after I die, then we're stuck in the middle. Get, ve'inoi, get. It's a suffix. Ve'meis, and if he dies, as we've learned many times, anytime we have a case of a suffix gerushin, it requires chalitza to remove the zika, to remove the bond between this woman and the husband's brother, but you can't actually do yibam due to the isser ishes ach. And finally says, the Mishnah so says, here's your get. And he puts it all together. Mehayoim, imesi, and then it gets better. He gets better. And he's walking around. So clearly, he didn't die from chayli. But then V'chalo Macy got sick and he died. So what do we do now? What caused his death? Was it the original sickness or not? Says the Mishnah. So we have to evaluate him. If we can figure out that he died from the first sickness, then Areza get. V'imlav Einoy get. So multiple Lashainis in the Mishnah. And now, as always, let's allow the Gemara to piece by piece teach us the different nuances in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Alma, what do we see from the Mishnah? Im Mesi, in the first part of the Mishnah, he says, Zagite Im Mesi, clearly that means Kalachar Misa Dami. And that's the reason why it was not a good get. But problem is, Vadar Tani, the Mishnah continued and learned, and then it didn't work. Alma Mesi Lev Klachar Misa Dami. So what do the words in Mesi mean? We're having conflicting explanations throughout the Mishnah. So as everyone is probably anticipating the Teretz, Amar Abaye, the words in Mesi themselves, Shtei L'shoines mashma can be mashma two things. Mashma kemeachshav u'mashma klachar misa. Can mean either now or can mean achar misa. Omar le me'ayoim. If he says me'ayoim in misa, command amar le me'achshav dami. Amar le me'ayoim command amar lo lachar misa dami. So the words themselves do not have a clear definition, but rather together with the context we'll be able to decide. We continue about 20 lines down. First line is dami. First word on the line is dami. Here we go. Zeh gitich, two dots. Zeh gitich im mesi, we said lo amar klum. Amar Ravuna, says Ravuna. V'chaylat says, yardu chalitza. Ask the Gemara the question that's bothering everyone. V'lo yomer klum katani. It said he didn't do anything. What do you mean you do chalitza? Says the Gemara, Lo amar klom da asira lialma. It means he didn't do anything that she's to aser to the world, but there is something over here. Well, yavam nami asira, but on the yavam you're aser. Says the Gemara, okay, very nice. V'amid the Seifa Chalat says, the Seifa said explicitly, you have to chalitza b'chal d'reish yibum inam yame, clearly implying that in the Reisha there is no chalitza, it's only yibum. Says the Gemara, Masnisan Kirabanan, Rav Huna Damar Rav Yosi. Says the Gemara, this din of Rav Huna argues on the Mishnah. The Mishnah is going with the sheet of the Rabbanan. Rav Huna is going with Rav Yosi. Who's Rav Yosi? Damar, who holds Zman Ishal Shtar Meichiach Halav, that the Zman in the Shtar is a proof unto itself, and therefore, even though he says Zegitech Mesi, which we would, according to the Rabbanan, our Mishnah, say it's not a good get. Why not? Because it means Lachar Misa, it's Loyam or Klum, it's garnished, it's nothing. But according to Rav Yosi, there's a Zman in the get. So the Zman in the get, that will show us that it is at some level Chal today. And if it's some level Chal today, well, let's see what that means. So it's some level Chal today. So says the Gemara, 1 second, Rav Yosi, Chalitza Lami Lo Tibai. If it's Rav Yosi, you shouldn't even need Chalitza. Meaning, according to Rav Yosi, everything should be good and, according to Rav Yosi, there should not even be chalitza. Why? Because the Zman is Meichiach, which makes it as if he said from today, if I die, which makes it a kosher get, everything should be fine. Says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me, you know what Rav Huna really holds, Misafkele, Rav Huna was unsure. He did not know he looks like Rav Yosi, or in Allah like Rav Yosi. Maybe Rav Huna wasn't sure. So he required chalitza on the tzad that maybe there's something here. Says the Gemara, but is Rav Huna really in doubt? Now we have a story, 10 lines down. First one line is Vaha. Rabbi Avua, Chalash Katsek, Oli Gabi, Rav Huna, Rav Nachman went to visit Rabbi Avua. Oh, Marley, Rav Huna, Rav Nachman, by meaning Rabbi Avua asked from Rabbi Avua, Halach Rav Yosi, and Halach Rav Yosi. Oh, Marley, he said, what do you mean? Time of the Rav Yosi, I don't even know why Rav Yosi holds what he holds. Halachi, by meaning, you want me to ask him whether we paskin like him? Amarle, he says, don't be so bothered. You ask what the Allah is. The time of the Rav Yosi, you're worried about the reason? I'll tell you. Time of the Rav Yosi, I'll tell you afterwards. So okay, he listens. He asks, Amarle, and he responds, this is Rav Huna. So this is our proof that Rav Huna was not misupik, he was not unsure what the psak is, as we have a clear story. Rav Huna says he passed like Rav Yosi. But now, just wrapping up this story, Labasar Tanafik, after they left, Amarle, and he explained to him finally, I know time to Rav Yosi, you were bothered, what's the reason of Rav Yosi? 2 lines from the end of the Amud. So, but now we're back. We have a problem right now. Rav Huna holds like Rav Yosi. If what is the reason that he says you have to chalitza? It should be a kosher again, and everything should be fine. Says the Gemara, Ella, you know what Rav Huna's suffix is? Misavkale, Rav Huna was not sure, as we turn over to Ayin Beis, Amid Beis. I Omer Rav Yosi Baal Peh, Eloi. Rav Huna wasn't sure whether Rav Yosi says his din in a case of Baal Peh, in case in which the get itself did not have a Tanai, but when he gave it to her, he said this get should apply in Mesi. Meaning we know Rav Yosi holds Zman Shar Machichalav. But the question the Gemara is now explaining is Rav Huna wasn't sure how far Rav Yosi took his din. Says the Gemara again, on the top of Ayin Beis and Beis, is it true? Was Rav Huna really misapik? Someone gives his wife a get and says, here's your get if I don't come back within 12 months, and he dies within those 12 months, it's not a get. Vitani Allah, we learned on this, the Rabbanan allowed her to get remarried. Who are these Rabbi Yisenu that said, even though this man died within 12 months, and therefore theoretically it should not be a good get, because he said it's only a get if I don't come, and he died in the interim. Man Rabbi Yisenu, Amar Avuda, Amar Shmuel, Beidinu Deshar Mishcha. It's the Bezdin that permitted the oil. That's the name of the Bezdin. And why did they say that it was good? Because they all like Rav Yosi. And in this case, this condition was not written in the get. It was orally stipulated. So we see that Rav Yosi holds his din even in oral stipulation, even about bet. So we're back to our original Shaila. Why does Rav Huna say in the case of Emesi you have to do Chalitza? Ella, says the Gemara, Misafkalei. Meaning, it's true that's Rav Yosi holds, but do we paskin like Rav Yosi in that case? As Gemara, what's going on in Mimas Hafkle? Is it really a suffix? But Rava says, here's your get. If I die, and when I die, what is the halacha? Excuse me, that's the second case. He says, or he says, V'she'ani meis, in a case that I die, should be your get. The law is, Ariza get. Kishe amos, if he said, when I die, ula achar misa, then ein ze get. So what's this case? Echidami. If you're going to tell me that the case is that he said me'ayoim v'rabanan tzrich lemeimar. If the case is that he says me'ayoim and we're going the sheet of the Rabbanan, why would he have to explain this din? V'atanan, this is our Mishnah. So why would you say the din that's in our Mishnah? V'atanan, we learned in our Mishnah me'ayoim imesi arez get. Velalav, you know what must be going on over here? Deloy amar la me'ayoim. The case must be talking about he didn't say me'ayoim. So what's the reason it's a get? Rav Yosi, Rav Yosi. So we see we paskin like Rav Yosi. So we keep our being back to the same problem. Why does Rav Huna require chalitza in the case of Emesi? Says the Gemara, L'Rav Abshitale. The Rav Huna misafkale. At the end of the day, do we paskin like Rav Yosi in this case of Tanai Baal Peh? Says the Gemara, that we're not sure about. Rav was sure. Rav Huna was unsure. Teretz number 1. Viba Yisema. Teretz number 2. Loilam Damar La Mehayoim. Really, with that price, it could be that he said Mehayoim. And you tell me, why do we have to say that if it's the sheet of the Rabbanon? The Rabbanon. Vani Lishni, it's Richlei. And it's just teaching us these extra Lishainais. It's teaching us what they mean. Sha'ani meis, that if someone says that when I will die, ki'im meisi dami. It's like he's saying, if I die. Kisha almost when I will die is klachar misa dami. So we could explain that it's going within the Rabbanon. So that's really the end of the sheet of Rav Huna. Rav Huna, who took us all the way from Amud Aleph after the Mishnah, saying that there's chalitza required. We went on a wild goose chase figuring out who is the sheet of Rav Huna. And that really finally concludes the whole shir. But now, the way that we're going to wrap everything up is that we're going to learn Rav Huna on a different part of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, V'ika damasni, literally smack in the middle of the Amud, the first line is Kishamas. V'ika damasni la'aseifa. And there are some who learn that Rav Huna was referring to the end of the first part of the Mishnah. That says, Egidich la'achar misa, lo yamar klum. It said if you give a get that should work after he dies, it's nothing. And on that, Amar Rav Huna, u'lidivrei Rav Yosi. Chaylat says, in this case, Rav Yosi will hold, you have to give chalitza. Says the Gemara, Pshita, mideseifa l'Rabbanan chalitza. In the Seifa, when we have a real suffix, me'ayoim ula'achar misa l'Rabbanan, you have to have chalitza. So Reisha, then the first case where he said la'achar misa, nami l'Rav Yosi chaylat says, because according to Rav Yosi, this man is moichiach. So he said said la'achar miso, but there's a zman that makes it me'hayoim. So of course Rav Yossi, well, this chalitza in this case. Explains the Gemara, Ma'u Detem, I would have thought Rav Yossi bought Rebbe's fearlay. Maybe in this case Rav Yossi holds like Rebbe. Ta'amar Gita me'al Yahave. And v'chalitza nami lo tibai. And you wouldn't even need chalitza. Kamash Malon, V'lo Rebbe, Savar la Rav Yossi, V'lo Rav Yossi, Savar la ke Rebbe. And now the Gemara explains why not. Rebbe, lo Savar la Rav Yossi, dikatani, kozeh get. Rebbe says that in this case it is a galamuti to Rav Yossi. He comes to exclude from Rav Yossi because Rav Yossi is going to hold in many more cases is going to be a potential get because Rav Yossi holds that in all cases we say zman shel shtar. For Rav Yossi is like Rebbe. Why the katani? Because that get lamuti to Rebbe. So now that we understood that Rebbe doesn't hold like Rav Yossi and Rav Yossi doesn't hold like Rebbe, but says the Gemara, who is this Rebbe? Rebbe Mahi, what's this din of Rebbe? Titania, we learned in our Braisa. Mehayoim lachar misa. Ain't I get similar to our Mishnah. I've said Mehayoim lachar misa is not a get to Chachamim, but Rebbe Omer, cause I get. Rav Yossi Mahi, what is the din of Rav Yossi? It's not in case of Tunugala Ishti Yom Labas Mekan V'Beis Chodesh. Cause V'u B'Tochi L'Chosh Rasu L'Achar V'Beis Chodesh. Ain't I get. Rav Yossi Omer cause I get, because in the world of Rav Yossi there's always the implied zman shel shtar that makes it chal mehayoim. Rebbe lo savar like Rav Yossi, Rav Yossi lo savar like Rebbe. Two ways of learning Rav Huna in the Mishnah. That according to Rav Yossi there will be chalitza. We'll pick it up from the two dots in the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.